The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Welcome to Sarah's Country, where I strive to achieve a home for you all to come in your own time, wherever you have a moment to switch off from the day-to-day of farming and growing the finest food and fibre in this country, or being a consumer or a support person around it. This is your chance to immerse yourself in a diverse way of thinking with an open mind and an open heart to what the future challenges and opportunities are for our food and fibre sector here in New Zealand. We have been so segmented in our thinking for so many decades in product categories. You know what it's like. What do you work in, Bill? Oh, I'm a dairy farmer. What about you, Ralph? I grow lettuces. And Jenny? Hawke's Bay's finest Chardonnay, all with different representations, different leadership styles, different visions, yet to the consumer, it's just food or just wine, until the discerning, curious consumer is going to drill down to find there's a common attitude amongst our farmers and growers here at the bottom of the world, of a respect for our tauranga, our land, soil and our water. We've been striving as a sector to find our common attributes to collaborate on as we navigate the very big wide world of our global markets. We're just little seabirds, putting up the good fight in that mighty sea breeze. But what if our diversity is our biggest asset? It's like a group of mates, right? You're going to the same restaurant for the same reason. Well, you think, but ordering very differently off the menu and everyone wants a different outcome, don't they? Bill, he likes good service. Ralph, he just wants to be comfortable. Jenny, of course, she wants a great wine list. Same restaurants, same reason, but different ways of navigating to their own differing outcomes. One wise farming woman, I'm going to say, she was from Southland, she told me that the same is with succession planning. If the males hang out the washing differently to you, who cares if it gets dry, right? So I've been dwelling on this a lot as the government tries to enable an industry that really is personally responsible for its own outcomes. Who's right and who's wrong? I've also been thinking about this because, Joel, I get my first order of my food bag. It's coming on Sunday. How on earth does Nadia navigate a menu to please everyone, especially when I saw, Joel, on my first order, Brussels sprouts.
So you're not a Sprouts fan then?
No, but there's always, isn't there? There's one or maybe two vegetables that as an adult you try really hard and you feel like you're being childish, but you just can't shift your thoughts on. What's yours?
I think I've finally made my peace with mushrooms. It's taken a long time and a lot of years, but I can finally eat a mushroom without
gagging.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Yet there's certain things like couscous still gets me a wee bit. But
you ate it tonight, though.
Yeah, I know. This is it. I'm trying new things. I'm trying to get better at it.
This is good. Mother Joanne will be very, very proud. I had avocado rotten in a panini heated up once. That was me done. I've just been slowly working back bit by bit. But, let's have some fun tonight. Sarah's Country, for those of you who have just joined us for the first time, Monday through Thursday, we're a live interactive show broadcast across multiple different platforms on the web. And I absolutely love when you guys start going nuts in the comments because I feel like I'm not sitting here in a room talking to myself. It's lovely. So tonight I want to know, what's that one vegetable that you just still can't do it? You might be like Jock in his, I'm not going to assume, later years. What is it that you just still can't stand? I get asked by events, what's your special dietary requirements? And I just simply write back, no yams. It's an absolute deal breaker for me. I'd love to know what yours are, and I'll see if I can be cheeky with some of our guests and find out what theirs is. The reason I'm kicking off tonight with my sermon on diversity of thinking, but to come together to achieve mutually beneficial outcomes, is following today's release of the 2020 KPMG Agribusiness Agenda. You know, that one they release every year at the physical field days, which sadly we don't have. It forms every year and has done for the past decade as a roadmap for critical thinking to push the barrows and build consensus and collaboration in our industry. We're going to kick off the show tonight with thought leader Ian Proudfoot to understand why it's important to now focus on an agenda of voices, not a single source of inspirational leadership. After 7:20, I'm concerned about what I'm hearing on the ground about high levels of nitrate poisoning rising around the country post-drought, with a flush of grass following this recent rain. So I've called up regional leader for DairyNZ, Wilma Porter, to discuss what we need to be aware of and some of those tips to ensure cattle are safe from this quick rise in nitrate levels. Existing Fonterra farmer director has moved into the big chair after John Monaghan is going to retire in November. After 7:30, we're going to be joined by Peter McBride, known to many of you after his successful tenure at Zespri. And what is his learnings from the premium fruit marketing success story that he can bring to the global commodity dairy giant? To close the show, this Agribusiness Leaders Priority Survey has pointed out that millennial and female contributors see industry priorities quite differently. Surprise. So, why not go to an inspirational farming leader and founder of Agri-Women's Development Trust, Lindy Nelson? She's going to join us after 7:40 to share her insights on how female contributors can engage more deeply with these key issues. All that first up after this wonderful on-farm story about how Ross and Joe Hay from North Otago are typical of thousands of young farming couples who work hard to continuously search for a chance to grow and get ahead. This is Sarah's Country.
Living rurally, it's pretty easy to be isolated. You read things in the media that are anti-farming, you hear things, see things online, and you do mull things over a lot. Sometimes, you go to town and you meet people in the supermarket and you do that old, "Hi, how are you?" "I'm good, thanks." "Yeah, how are you?" "Yeah, I'm good, thanks." And that's it. And inside you're crumbling. Farmers really, really care about their farms and about their businesses. So pretty cool, I think, just to be able to meet with other people who really get what you're going through. We're Ross and Joe Hay. We are sheep and beef farming here with our family in Herbert, North Otago. We've got a 270 hectare property here in Herbert that we mainly finish on with a little bit of irrigation, and we've got another 410 hectares at Meraki that we lease. We've got a breeding flock of 2,600 ewes, just over 700 hogget replacements, 250 R1s, and then the same of bull calves as well. Ross's parents moved here about 40 years ago. Ross and I took over in 2006.
I think they got mixed up when
We've got three little farmers, really. There's usually a bit of an argument when Dad leaves about who's going with Dad, and they don't want to stay with Mum. They love being in the yards and just love being out on farm with us.
Can I put it on high?
Yep, you can. A few years ago I went to an Agri-Women's Development Trust Understanding Your Farming Business course. Just the buzz in the room among a whole bunch of women that do similar things. It was pretty empowering and pretty cool. I came away just with this real desire to try and get a group of those similar women in North Otago together. I've got some pretty cool friends. I managed to get them to help me get together and form a wee team where we could organise some things. and managed to get quite a few people along, which was cool. We were stuck for names and we bandied around a few ideas for a while, and somebody came out with lip gloss and gumboots, and it stuck. The main objective is to help build people's confidence and realise that they themselves are really valuable to their farming team. I'm pretty passionate about seeing other people realise their potential. In a dry season, Ross's dad has some very wise words. Every day is another day closer to rain, and it's true.
Come on, Charlie!
We live here, we work here, and a thriving community is what you want, so you do your bit.
History tells us that organisations prosper when leaders recognise that they don't have all the answers and work to cultivate a culture where people are comfortable helping them to understand the world as it really is, rather than how they believe it should be. That is my favourite quote from this freshly released today, 2020 KPMG Agribusiness Agenda, hot off the press. Now, while the opportunity for New Zealand's food and fibre sector is greater than it has ever been, the issues raised by the diverse voices featured in this agenda means now more than ever we need leaders to listen and act on diverse opinions. Joining us after a very busy day, which is a pinnacle part of our calendar, is Global Head of Agribusiness, Ian Proudfoot. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on what I know is a very busy day for you, Ian.
No problem, Sarah. At least I didn't have to drive to the Waikato today, so that shortened my day a little bit.
There you go, absolutely. Now, the one thing that really stands out is that, firstly, going into the 11th year of the agenda, you really wanted to take a spin on what you'd done in the past?
Yeah, so I suppose we've done 10 years, and last year's agenda sort of wrapped up nicely that decade. It showed the progress through the decade. And it was like, I don't want to keep doing it the same way. We want to mix things up, and otherwise it gets boring for us, and it will get boring for the people reading it. So, one of the pieces of feedback we got last year is you take a whole range of diverse perspectives and then filter it down to give one view. Why don't you just give the wide range of views? So, that's where agenda voices came from. And the agenda this year, we've got 12 different streams of voice coming through. And it's the diversity in those voices, yet the commonality of desire to see the sector succeed that really comes through very strongly in the report.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start to blend, we lose that creativity of thinking.
Yeah, and I think, where I've got to, particularly, it was something I was feeling quite strongly is, we think we've got diversity linked or solved by just, setting ourselves some targets about the number of women we have on our boards, or, the number of people of different races that we try to bring into our organizations. But the reality is that's not getting diversity solved. Diversity is different thoughts and people that are able to think and address issues in different ways. And when you look at what we're facing now, there is no right answer. There's no playbook. So organisations that are able to bring a diversity of opinion to the table are more likely to make the best decisions and be able to move forward quickly. Those that are sort of stuck with a traditional way of thinking are going to struggle to move out of this period that we're in at the moment.
And I found it very interesting, having personally been through this experience, Ian, that you can have all the thinking in the world, but if you don't have a culture that cultivates that to take action and go forth and nurture that idea, then it's certainly going to make no difference.
No, I had a real moment of realization about that. We had somebody called Dr. Anita Sands come and talk to our partners in February. And, that need to get belonging to an organization so that you have the same self at home as you have at work, that you're not needing to hide anything. It just made so much sense to me. And I think, it's getting that culture right so people feel they belong and they bring 100% of themselves to work and are able then just to get on and make the contribution, maximize their contribution. it's a different way of thinking about it. It challenges a lot of leaders, but to me, it is the future. We need to have diverse organisations if we're going to win or succeed in a very diverse and complex world.
What happens when you have, diverse opinions on priorities, though?
That's an interesting question, and you can see very clearly in the survey. We've been able to split the survey this year between our female contributors, our millennials, our baby boomers, and very, very different sets of perspectives. To me, it's about then being a good leader, how you can listen to all those diverse perspectives and work out, what is the right course of action for your organization. It needs a higher level of leadership capability. But, it's interesting as well where you see some of the diversity. Some of the things that we're being told by some of our stakeholder groups are not then coming through in how they're perceiving their priorities. So, what actually is really important to people. And I think, in the end, that is something that a good leader will be able to distill by being able to ask questions to those diverse contributors into their organization.
How much of the new normal that has arisen from COVID was there all along and COVID was just the push?
When sort of where my thinking's evolved, and I think we talked a few weeks ago when we were doing the now normal. I think when you look at it, the environment, it was there. We've just now got to move faster. The people challenges we're facing, they've always been there. In fact, I went back and looked at our 2010 agenda, and we're fundamentally writing the same things as we wrote 10 years ago. The issues that we've got around digitization and accelerating our uptake of technology, that was there as well. Our food insecurity was always there. We now just know about it because it's been brought out into the open. So I don't think COVID's changed very much, but what it has done is accelerated and prioritized a whole range of different things. And that therefore means, we've got to change our response to some of these issues, because the big message we're getting from international is that, it's going to be about being a purpose-driven organization. It's those that are clear on why they exist will be the ones that thrive coming out of this. Those that don't quite understand why they're there, they do because they're there to make a profit, that's not going to be enough.
My biggest concern, in my opinion, on this agenda is what's facing the rise of global protectionism in our markets, Ian, and how New Zealand can position itself with that point of difference. What's your thoughts on the future ahead for that?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing this trend away from globalization towards isolationism and protectionism. Countries have had real shocks, so they're looking at what they can do domestically. And even today we see we're stepping back from hosting APEC here, and we're going to have APEC online. Well, the impact of that in terms of our ability to tell our story to half the world is massive, in terms of losing that opportunity to do that for another 25 years. So it's a big step back. So I'm really concerned about our ability to build connections. So we do need to have a plan for how we open the border. We do need to have a plan about how we reintegrate ourselves into the world, and doing that as quickly as we can do. But equally, we've got to be really focused on ensuring that the trade we do is good for the country that we're doing trade with, so they don't want to lose us as a trading partner. So, if trade with New Zealand is good for all, not just good for us, I believe we can protect our niche positions and make sure that, we service those incredibly well.
Okay, lastly, Ian, before I ask you about your most dreaded childhood memories of the vegetables your mother used to make or father used to make you eat, how much have we come in regards to collaboration when we have a primary sector council vision still being shelved, going into an election that potentially will not be released now? And how much of that role is the government's versus the industry just getting on and doing it itself?
I have just seen an invite coming through for the launch of that next week. So
There
hopefully
you go.
it's not being
You
shelved
heard it
till
here
after
on
the election.
Serious
So
Country.
hopefully we are going to see that come forward. I think that vision is incredibly important. Fit for a better world is our articulation of what our aspiration is. We've got to make it a bit sharper. We've got to put a North Star in there that we can all chase towards. But in the end, we need to be heading in the same direction. So we can't afford to hold back. We can't afford for that to be sat upon. It's not perfect. It never was going to be perfect, trying to get everybody on board in a common vision. but it's a starting point and it's more than we've had before. So from my perspective, we need to move forward.
Ian, absolutely, 100%. I don't think there'll be a single person watching or listening to this that would disagree in a vision. But with anything, how on earth does a small group of people create an action plan where there's so many stakeholders to see that action plan out with a lack of major consultation process?
I think, it's a matter of every subsector, every part of the industry, every company saying, well, this is how I'm going to take this broad framework and incorporate it into my own strategy. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen overnight. That's a 2 or 3 year process as people do strategy reviews. But it just means we're providing a common set of language, a common set of goals. Things like tatayao, the concept that we farm in a regenerative way, or a way that makes our environment better and more balanced than it's been in the past. All those sort of things, I think, give us the framework that each individual organisation can then decide what is the right way to implement that framework within its organisation. I don't think we can do this by imposing, this is how everybody's going to do it. But there's got to be some bottom lines, and we've got to make sure those bottom lines are in place, and we work to exceed those as quickly as possible.
Ian, you heard my intro, so it's similar to the Southland woman saying, hey, look, if they're washing out differently and it still dries, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. But actually, it's about how people start to think differently about things. And if we can start that process and bring that diversity of view, then we will see. We've seen huge change over 10 years. We demonstrated that in last year's agenda. This is about saying, well, this is what we want to be heading towards in 20 years' time.
Absolutely. Can I just say congratulations on a fantastic agenda. I haven't got through it all, but it will certainly be tonight's reading. It's one of the pieces of literature I look forward to so much every year. And congratulations to the deeper team. There's a huge team around pulling this agenda together. You must be so proud of.
I'm incredibly proud of the team, and they did a fantastic job launching it today as well. So, I think I'm incredibly blessed to work with such a talented group of people. Now,
what is that one vegetable?
For me, I'm from a Scottish family, so for me it was always neeps and tatties. When that was on the menu, it was just the one thing I couldn't bear eating. It would turn my toes. But anything that involves both turnips and swede, as my mum used to prepare, it was just too much.
Oh, sheep feed. Sorry, I totally agree with you, Ian. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on release day of the 2020 KPMG Agribusiness Agenda. This Global Head of Agribusiness, Ian Proudfoot. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Do you know what that is, Joel? Neeps and tatties? As he comes to a thing.
Yep. No, I lived in Scotland for a few years.
Oh, of course you did.
Yeah, neeps and tatties isn't that bad. I like neeps and tatties, but each to their own.
There we go. Now we're talking about what is those things that those vegetables that you still can't get your head around. I'd love to know in the comments below. I've been sharing some of mine: Brussels sprouts, yams, and pumpkin. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm a root vegetable girl. No, I'm not a root vegetable girl. I'll stop right there. Now, coming up next on Sarah's Country, we're going to be joined by a regional leader for DairyNZ, Wilma Foster, as we're talking about the fears of the rise in nitrate poisoning in our cattle. All that up on Sarah's Country next. This is Sarah's Country.
We're a large deer farm and very proud deer farmer at that. I grew up here as a little boy. It is just an amazing lifestyle. I could never live in a city ever again. Just the big open spaces and just the peacefulness of it all. I think deer are very majestic, very intelligent animal. Having deer that are under pressure or anything like that, or overstocked, they really don't perform as well. You should really be spreading them out on beautiful pastures, keeping them happy. A happy deer is a good deer. And good feed, good grass. We renew our pastures all the time in the paddock, so we're always getting the best quality grass. Well, I guess in the wild, they don't have the luxury of the grass that we put in front of them here as a farmed animal. I believe we've got some of the best English type deer in the country, if not the world. And to associate our brand with Silver Fern Farms brand works for us. Without the likes of Silver Fern Farms, then there's no point doing this. So they're very, very important for us. I'm Mark Tapley, very proud suppliers of venison to Silver Fern Farms.
Now, nitrate poisoning is caused by high nitrate levels in feed, and it usually happens around this time of year, sort of late autumn or winter, particularly during a flush of growth after a dry period. And we certainly have seen that across the whole of the North Island and the Upper South. Now, with this drought conditions and recent rain, it's important that DairyNZ ensure farmers are aware to be extra vigilant. Joining us now out of the Waikato from DairyNZ is Regional Leader for Waikato, Wilma Foster. Good evening, Wilma.
Good evening.
This isn't a new problem. We've known about nitrate poisoning for some time, haven't we?
Yeah, nitrate poisoning has been around for probably as long as we've been growing grass. Some years we tend to see it more than others, so sometimes we forget that it's actually is a problem that we've got to think about, and this year is another year where it's certainly around.
Yeah, do you think it's the excitement of grass growth for those farmers who have been suffering from drought conditions that they forget about things like this?
It can be, because it just happens for such a short period. You may be on a farm and have never come across it before and then move to another property, and it may be because of the conditions suddenly become evident in your herd.
What are some of those signs of nitrate poisoning?
People will tend to find that, firstly, they'll tend to see it in their stock. So their stock will become agitated. There's a lack of oxygen that is happening in the cow. So that's stopping her being able to get oxygen from her lungs around her body. So often they will become very excited, run around the paddock, and then they can collapse and they can die very quickly.
I'd love to understand the science behind what happens when you have, a dry soil and then all of a sudden you put water on it, the grass wants to grow. What's that chemical biochemistry sort of thing that happens that makes that nitrate levels increase rapidly?
So the plants take up nitrate, so the nitrate levels then build up within the plants. And when there's sunshine, the sunshine helps convert that nitrate into protein. And particularly when the grass is growing very fast, its rate of uptake is faster than what the plant can handle itself. So then the levels build up in the plants. It's very easy to find out and do a very simple herbage test. Farmers can do it on their farm so they can actually monitor what the nitrate levels are in the grass.
And how would you go about doing one of those?
So often you can go to your veterinary supplier will have nitrate kits that you can pick up, and it's just a matter of crushing the grass, putting it on some little tab of paper, and it will show you a colour, and you can use that colour to work out whether the grass is high in nitrate and could be a problem or is safe to feed.
What about fertiliser regimes as well and bringing that into the mix?
So often, as you said, following a drought, farmers are very short of feed and they need to try and build cover very quickly. So to do that, often some extra nitrogen may have been applied to pasture. So that probably just adds to the amount of nitrogen that's there, as well as a surplus that then becomes available in the soil. It's not only nitrogen applications that can cause nitrate poisoning, but it may be an additional factor that's causing it to happen.
And what about in terms of slipping over calving? Will it have an effect, especially at this time of year?
Yeah, so we're seeing quite a few farmers. We've had cases in our area and in Northland in particular where we've had cow deaths. But on some farms where there haven't been cow deaths, there have been unexplained abortions in cows. So the cows have calved and slipped. And some of those, it's been suspected that they have come as a result of having high nitrate levels in the grass. And it's meant that there hasn't been enough oxygen in the blood of the cow to be able to support the calf. And so, pretty sadly, that's one of the outcomes that we're seeing.
Is there anything that you can do when you start to see a subclinical sign come forward that you can drench for or treat from a veterinary point of view?
Yes, certainly. If you see anything at risk, first thing you do is ring your vet and remove the animals from the pasture. Vets will tend to ring. Quite a number of vets will often come on property because they can give some treatments to cows and actually save the animals at that point if you get them early enough. But we're certainly trying to advocate that prevention is easier than cure. And so practices like just knowing what your feed is, if it's at risk or not, is a very important thing to think about. And then following that, if it is at risk, making sure you're managing it. So maybe that at-risk feed is part of a wider diet, which is then safe for the cows to eat.
Right, so you can supplement to bring that down.
Yep, often people will do is they will have maybe a safe pasture. So they might feed the cows on that first, maybe with some hay or silage, and then give them a break of the grass that you think might be a bit at risk. So it's on grazing, and so it only becomes a small portion of their total feed. And, if you're doing that, you do that very slowly, see how it goes, observe your animals quite regularly while they're there, just to double check that, yes, this is safe.
Has this got anything to do with the hot, in terms of winter grazing and a lot more brassicas over grass? Is there any particular type of crop that's more likely to uptake nitrates heavily than others?
I haven't really heard it so much in brassicas myself. I'm not a particular forage expert on that, but we do see it quite a lot in people who've planted annuals. So grasses in particular that grow very fast over winter. So sometimes your brassicas are holding at their current levels, but grasses, annual ryegrasses, some Italian ryegrasses in particular, are growing at a very fast rate at the moment. And so they tend to be the ones that you tend to see the problems in.
And so I'd love to get a bit of an overall from your particular perspective in your day-to-day as regional leader for DairyNZ in the Waikato, coming out of such dry conditions and going into the winter pre-calving. What are some of those key messages you're trying to get out to your farmers?
So our first key message is, test everything that you can so that you can have some confidence about what you're feeding your animals. And if you have any questions, any concerns, contacting your local vet. They've got a very good range of ways to be able to help someone work through what the problems might be. They would probably be the two key things. There's certainly plenty of information on our website to find out more about nitrate poisoning, things to look for and what to do.
Yeah. And well, lastly, how much rain have you had? It's been pouring down here non-stop in Canterbury for the last 3-4 days.
Yeah, it's been a lot of rain. It's been very welcome in some of our areas. There are certainly some areas that they feel they could do with a few days without rain now. It's all very welcome at the moment. We're in a pretty interesting position that we want rain for the water table, but now, especially on some of those clay soils around the Hauraki Plains, we don't want too much rain because then it's hard to actually manage our stock on those wet pastures. So we're stuck in between.
Oh, and on that, I'd like to lastly just ask you around, it was quite devastating, the anti-winter grazing movement that happened last winter, particularly in Southland. Do you focus quite heavily on educating your farmers around winter grazing management practices to ensure that it stays, sort of out of the headlines this year?
Yeah, we're just wanting all our farmers to do best practice as much as we can. So I know there is work happening down in Southland at the moment. Certainly before winter started, there were several big field days to try and actually get people to think through what is their process that they will use on their farm to minimise the impact. And I know there's a current, some events happening down there to try and support farmers so that they can achieve best practice. I think most farmers want to be achieving best practice, and sometimes they just need to think through and help them just manage their way through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much going on in a farmer's brain to try and get through and navigate. And there's wonderful people like you, Wilma, a regional leader for DairyNZ from the Waikato there. Now, remember around the risk of nitrate poisoning at this particular time of year. It's absolutely devastating. Now, coming up after the break on Sarah's Country, we stay on the theme of dairy with the brand new chairman of Fonterra, who's come across from Zespri. All that with Peter McBride after the break. This is Sarah's Country.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Now, Zespri's alumni have filtered into some pretty top jobs. Silver Fern Farms with CEO Simon Lemmer, Primary Sector Council's Chair Lane Jager, and even New Zealand's National Party leader Todd Muller, highly regarded for their respected, humble approach to leadership from their incubation at Zespri, among others. Now, the latest humble leader to cross-sector position is a former Zespri chair who navigated the devastating PSA biosecurity incursion on behalf of kiwifruit growers Peter McBride, who now this week is announced to chair the Fonterra Board into its next chapter of value add. And we're about to hear about his vision for the global dairy giant. And Peter joins us now. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good. Firstly, congratulations on the new promotion. How does it feel?
Thank you. Well, it is very humbling, actually. I mean, to be given this opportunity, it's a great honour, really. So I'll certainly give it my best shot.
Hey, some big boots to fill. Vander Hayden, Wilson and Monaghan. What do you think is some of the legacies that your predecessors have brought to the table?
I think the first legacy is obviously the formation of Fonterra and sort of the regulatory construct and the constitution that we have now. So there's some legacies there, and it's not easy to lead change in a cooperative, as you know. So some big boots to fill in that regard.
There's a lot to be said about the success story of a hairy brown fruit being regarded as a premium delicacy. You know, there's certainly a lot of people that will be looking to you about what your learnings from Zespri are going to bring to the mighty big table of Fonterra.
Yeah, I think from a governance perspective, I've had quite a bit of experience in China. We had a few issues ourselves in China, not that dissimilar to some of the Fonterra issues. We also went through a period of regulatory change, constitutional change. We placed our CEO in Singapore, so strongly market-led organisation. So, there's quite a few insights that are a little bit different to Fonterra, but the principles are quite similar.
And what about in regards to your background? Many would know that you, of course, have fingers in a lot of pies and being a dairy farmer previously. Are you close enough to the day-to-day running of dairy farms now, though?
Yeah, I've got a role with Trinity Lands. I'm the CEO. We have around 20 dairy farms in the South Waikato, but we have our own farm in Tokoroa. We have a contract milker. I'm engaging with him quite often. I'm over there at least every fortnight. Obviously not milking the cows like I used to do. Life's changed for me in that regard, but certainly very engaged in the farm.
And what are some of those learnings you're picking up from the grassroots and what they're hoping to see from leadership at Fonterra?
I guess, well, there's two parts to that. There's what they're looking for from us, I think, is how we engage with them. It's pretty important to farmers. They're looking for some change in that regard, I think, and that's what John's already leading a lot of that change. I think they're looking for us to champion their cause for them, and that comes in two parts. I think partly they feel under a lot of pressure from what I would call changing consumer trends, but also potentially regulatory pressure. And I think it's how we lead them through that and how we respond to those challenges, I think, is really important. So if we take a market perspective and look for the opportunities and the threat, I think it becomes quite defining for us. So a different perspective and how we look at those things, I think, is quite important.
And Fonterra has shown signs of moving to a value add with the recent cooperative difference of a 10 cent per kilo of milk solids for more sustainably produced dairy. There is also murmurings on the ground, though, that it's not a fair playing field for everyone. Is this just the jolt dairy farmers need, though, to think differently about what premium and added value means?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it. So there's the sort of compliance part, which is pretty much a legal responsibility anyway and will be within 2 years in terms of farm environment plans. But on the other side, there are milk quality parameters that are also important. Now, there's a bit of philosophical in all this because some folks have a view that when you belong to a cooperative that you're equal. And I think there's a different paradigm and it's called equal opportunity. So I think it's really important that everybody has an equal opportunity and to participate. And I think that's more of a useful way of looking at a better perspective.
Absolutely. I think so. You've used some great terminology there. What are some of your biggest learnings from the PSA outbreak and from biosecurity that you'll bring forward, particularly around farmer communication?
I think it's a two-way thing. So I think the relationship now under the current construct with MPI is a much better one than what we had when the incursion occurred for PSA. The comms is way better, and there's also a partnership approach to breaches at the border. So, in particular in kiwifruit, one of the most significant threats is brown mum-rated stink bug. But we have the constant threat of Mediterranean fruit fly, and you'll see how industry partner with government in resolving those issues. And I think it's a lot better than what it was 10 years ago. I think we've moved forward a long way.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Peter. And again, congratulations on the new role as chair of the Fonterra Board. It's certainly a very big job, as we've observed over the decades, and a tough one at that. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you a lot more into the future. That's Peter McBride, the new Fonterra chair. Now, coming up next to close the show on Sarah's Country, I have been looking forward to the moment to have this wonderful woman on our show. She is the former founder of the Agri-Women's Development Trust. I know a avid watcher of Sarah's Country, and it was all off the back of reading this agribusiness agenda and talking around this diversity of thinking. Where are we at, do you think? I'd love to know in the comments below. I've had a few comments in the past from women that have come from outside the primary sector recently into it and still being talked down to and talked to like they don't know anything. That's their view. Me personally, I feel like we've come a long way. It's a very interesting one. Love to talk to Lindy about this. Do you feel heard? Do you think that we are bringing those diverse thoughts to the table? Do we have an open mind and an open heart on this? All that up next in Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
The recipe for perfect beef and lamb. Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. Taste pure nature.
As we were talking earlier in the start of the show around the release of this wonderful 2020 Agribusiness Agenda, which I have my hands on, you can go to KPMG, search Agribusiness Agenda, coming into its 11th year. And of course, as we heard from Ian Proudfoot, time to separate out that single voice of direction into an agenda of voices, listening to a diverse amount of perspectives when it comes to it. And one of those bright lights within the farming sector for many, many years. Joining us now is Lindy Nelson. Welcome to Ceres Country. Finally, I've got you on the show. I'm so excited.
Tēnā koe. I'd love to be described as a bright light. That's I'm actually trying to get the lighting right here tonight, so hopefully you can see me.
Well, you're very bright with your beautiful attire. Now, Lindy, I know that you do so much work behind the scenes that a lot of people do not know, pushing people in the right direction, out of their comfort zone sometimes. How much involvement did you have in this diversity of thinking in this agenda?
Well, you know, both Ross Buckley, who's the chair of KPMG, and Ian Proudfoot have always been incredibly supportive of the trust and partnering with us. And so it wasn't a big push at all to say, hey, what about actually having some agenda, some female voices come through? So, you know, it was a bit of a conversation in the car park with Ian, and he was really up for it. And I think what surprised him was with some areas where there was a really big difference. It wasn't a surprise to me because, you know, I've been working now for 12 years with women in the sector, and I know the things that really stir their passions, break their hearts, and where they want to put their energy. So, you know, one of the things that came up was around community, and the wider community being the urban, rural, and the togetherness. So that really wasn't a surprise at all.
When are we going to learn, Lindy, about having the two of priorities between the genders working side by side simultaneously to achieve greatness, whilst men go over the how and women go over the why, and both working to achieve a common goal?
Yeah. So can you just reframe that? Because I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, Sarah.
When are we going to get to a point where we can set each other in a similar direction to achieve both in unison?
Well, do you think we need to? I mean, isn't that what diversity is all about, is actually having different priorities, having different focuses? I mean, I think one of the really good things is I think we're really starting to get to grips with what diversity means. Mm-hmm. And in fact, diversity will often mean difference and disagreement, and we've got to get comfortable with that. The very fact that diversity is around having different experiences means our experiences are going to lead us in different directions. And it's the real key, and I think it was great to see Dr. Anita Sands here earlier in the year, and when she talked about diversity, she talked about the second part of it, which is inclusion. And that's the part we haven't got right. So that is about, okay, I might be at the decision-making table, but do I feel that I belong? And so I think the next step for us in our evolution, if that's what you want to call it, is can we have robust conversations where we can have disagreement, but we can have really good outcomes. So I'm not sure that we want to see things the same, actually, but it's about how do we mature so diversity is celebrated and not the discomfort that it can often bring.
And I think I've taken my biggest learnings is that we should not define diversity. It is more around an experiential and inclusion perspective. So
Absolutely.
Then again, that comes down to the confidence of being able to speak up and feeling that their voices are of value. And so that's something that you've been heavily involved in with the Agri-Women's Development Trust for so long. Have you seen that cultural shift?
I've seen a shift in two ways. Women thinking they belong and gaining confidence to give it a go. And also, I think as an organisation, the Agri-Women's Development Trust, we've managed to shift or flip the script on how women view and see their own contributions and how the sector views and sees women's contributions. And, last night, you had two of our graduates on your show, and most nights you were seeing that sort of thing occur.
Oh, and you're so proud as a mama of all this wonderful alumni that has come out of the Agri-Women's Development Trust. It must feel so fantastic. What would you most like to see, Lindy? And I mean, this is certainly not because this will be the last time we'll have you on the show, but as we look out to 2040 now, in terms of the direction of leadership in this country.
What would I most like to see? I think we have to have really brave conversations around a national food strategy. So it's something that I've been really interested in looking at for the last 8 months. And so we're going to need really good leadership, and we're going to have to really understand the perspectives of others and how we think about food. And so that's going to be quite challenging, I think, for some of us. And I think that is going to be our most pressing thing. I mean, if we had a national strategy that pulled together education, employment, immigration, food insecurity, all of those things, then we would have the right policy development. I mean, it was fantastic to see Kalatahi back now being funded and operational. But if that was tied into food in the beginning, we would never have lost that. And so we've got this divergence of policies that aren't meeting the needs of the country in terms of food, and they're certainly not meeting people, who work in the sector's needs. Billion trees is another fantastic example. Feels like a good idea, but it probably will not help food insecurity, and it will not help a lot of farmers around New Zealand. So if we had food that was pivotal, and we really had some fantastic leadership around this, then we would actually have the right policies being created. So we need leadership from the government, and we need to have some really brave conversations around how citizens of New Zealand food, see and view the value of food.
And also picking up on some of those key points that Ian Proudfoot made, and I know he's passionate about, as I am, and I know you will be too, is the shift in corporate social responsibility in this country as well, and our most vulnerable. We've seen the rise of Meet the Need as one example, but we've got so much further to go, don't we?
Yeah, and I think we've got to have a different lens around what food insecurity looks like. And, we saw it through COVID. I mean, that is nothing. If we get to 2050 and we haven't sorted this, we're going to see a massive more amount. But we've got the potential. We're a relatively small country, and we can talk together. And what I really loved about this agenda is it talked about women's need to bring community together, and that is what we really need. Can we help, get women to bring urban and rural people together and talk about the issues that affect us all? And that, have a shared value perspective.
Just to end, I just want to say of a wonderful conversation I got to have with Mr. Doug Avery. Uncle Doug, today, and he left me by saying, if all of us individually could at least reach out and help one person interconnected to be better off in this country, we won't end up having to pay for them in the long run.
Good advice.
And I mean, it's certainly the work that you do has been able to rise women up to be able to be a more benefit to a wider community. And so congratulations. Thank you so much. And Lindy, are you able to tell us about some of the cool projects you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, so today actually I just launched a podcast series called Amplifying Us, which is around women, food producers with a global lens. So talking to some amazing women around the world and really looking at, how do we shift and change and meet the needs of 2050. So I've really enjoyed that, and I take my hat off to you because technology has never been my gig. And I've actually found I've actually learnt a lot, and some amazing women. So I've really been enjoying that. And a few of us are trying to sort of amplify this idea of a national food strategy. So just a couple of little things that I've been working on to keep me busy.
I know you're someone that will never stand still, and that's what we all love about you. Thank you so much, Lindy Nelson, the former founder of Agri-Women's Development Trust. And check out that podcast, Amplify Us, launched today. I can't wait. It's certainly going to be downloaded for my travel. Now, that's all we've got time for tonight on Serious Country. I absolutely love the comments coming in. Joel, we are still flat out on the food. Now, Michelle Stevens, for goodness sake, what is wrong with peas? I mean, apart from the fact that, they're hard to keep on the plate. But anyway, she doesn't like peas. And Posey, of course, she's Scottish. She likes her neeps. Yeah. And Jock, of course, Jock's there. Jock would like everything. You'd have to eat everything you were told by your mother, Jock, back in the day. Mother boiled the hell out of all green vegetables constantly. Cabbage, leeks, sprouts. My mum did the same too, Jock. Today, we have better cooking methods, so the Brussels sprouts are very welcome. And enjoying the Jerusalem artichokes.
Doesn't like tripe, though, and I don't blame him for that.
What's tripe?
Not nice.
Is that because it's got blood in it, doesn't it? No? Okay. All right. And that's all we've got. Thank you so much. I absolutely love your comments coming through. And Paul Harris has certainly enjoyed tonight, he says there in the comments. Let's do this again tomorrow night. 7 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, Serious Country broadcast in alliance with the great people at Farmers Weekly. Make sure you go and check out farmersweekly.co.nz, and landing across your rural delivery post boxes is that wonderful institution of a newspaper. If you want to get in touch, sarah@periummedia.com, and if you've missed any of the interviews or want to share them with anybody in particular, check us out on podcast, Serious Country, or head to Farmers Weekly's YouTube channel for the videos. That's all we've got time for tonight. We will see you tomorrow. Take care of yourself and each other around New Zealand, because we have a very bright and exciting future ahead of us in New Zealand's food and fibre sector.
This is Serious Country.